Oh, right. So, welcome to your first lecture. Let's talk about how lecture goes in general. First of all, we try to do what's called a flipped classroom here at Flatiron. So, a lot of you in your traditional schooling, you went to school, the teacher taught you about the Revolutionary War, and then you went home and did homework on the Revolutionary War or whatever. We do it in the reverse here, or we try to, meaning that you will, the night before a lecture, do some homework on whatever skill we are about to cover. The goal here being A, that you practice teaching yourself, and B, that you come to lecture already maybe with some of the fundamentals and or some questions about it. So it's fine if you do try to do the work and you are just totally lost and that's your question. You say, hey, I don't understand the request response cycle at all. It makes no sense to me. That's fine. Well, we just don't want you coming in totally blind and hearing about things in lecture for the very first time. So really the goal is the lecture supports your learning, not the other way around. What questions do you have about that?
So does that mean that we'll go over some of the topics that we did in the pre-lab?
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to review our iterators and go over some of that because that is a topic that I know people get a little stuck on. Probably a lot of you in your work just did a lot of while loops and stuck to that without using maybe each, or if you stuck to each, maybe didn't go to some of the more complicated ones. But we want to practice that today. Um, we're certainly not going over all the pre-work. A lot of it is stuff that we just expect. Hey, if you got up to Hashkeball, you probably at least are good enough with passing a variable in as a parameter to a method or a function. That doesn't mean you don't have questions about it, and we highly encourage you to ask us those questions either in lecture or in group work or in one-on-ones. But yeah, we're not necessarily going to go over every single component of it. Other questions? There are a few scheduled lab reviews for some of the bigger labs we do, or right before we get to the code challenge, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Um, but most of the labs, we're not explicitly going to be going over. Not just your pre-work, but in the entire 15 weeks here. So it's really on you to be asking questions. I mentioned before that we want you to be greedy with your education. You've given up a lot to be here, both time and money and whatever other plans you had. Some of you are here for starting your first career. A lot of you are here as career switchers. You've gambled a lot to be here. To make the most of that, to make the most of that sacrifice and make sure you get everything out of this program that you need to. You need to be greedy and ask a lot of questions. That's hard for some people. Generally speaking, I'd say most people that come to Flatiron are probably smarter than the average person, and that's great. Most programmers are probably a little smarter than the average person, and that's great too. The downside of that, the double-edged sword, is maybe some of you school kind of came easily to. And that's, terrific. Maybe math or science was not the struggle for you that it was for someone else. If it was for you, if you're like, no, I struggled through physics and calculus or algebra and it was a nightmare for me, that's fine too. It doesn't mean you won't do well here. But I think the problem for those people that it came easy to is you didn't always necessarily learn how to struggle through education. And that can be tough because now you will struggle through this. You will have those nights, all of you, every single one, where you just have no idea what's going on. And that goes forever. I'm trying to learn NoSQL databases right now, and I'm so lost. It's not something we cover in this course, but they make no sense to me right now. And I've been a developer for 10 years. And I just have to deal with that and keep working until I get it because it's something I want to learn. So you have to get over right this very second your fears of looking stupid, of having people think you're stupid. Just deal with it. Just say, you know what? I'm going to be dumb for a while. I'm going to be dumb and feel dumb forever in this career. And that's just how everyone feels. And it's okay. And get past it. Ask those questions. Really be greedy about them. And if you ask a question once or twice or 10 times and still don't understand, you've got to keep asking. I've gotten pretty good. I've taught programming for 2 years. I've tutored for, 20 years in various subjects. And I was a math teacher for 5 years. So I've gotten pretty good at knowing when I say, do you understand? And the student says, yeah, I understand, and knowing when that's a lie, but I'm not perfect at it. So if you say, yes, I understand, I might call you out on it, or you might slip by and in your head be like, no, I have no idea what he's saying, but I'm saying yes just so he shuts up. Try not to do that. It's not in your best interest, and it doesn't help me at all. You know, the more questions you ask, the busier we are and the more people we can hire. So I'm all for that. Can anyone tell us what imposter syndrome is?
Feeling like you don't belong in a place that you've either worked for or kind of got into. You feel like you're a fake and everybody else will eventually find out.
Yeah, perfect. Imposter syndrome is just like Colada said. It's rampant in humanity and especially prevalent in programming. It's that fear that I'm just one mistake, one question away from everyone finding out that I'm a big fraud and I don't belong here and I've been faking it this whole time. It's totally natural. Learn to recognize it. You do belong here. You have worked to get here. We know who we admit and who we don't. So just because you're struggling doesn't mean you don't belong here. There was a question of how to best approach lecture. Should you be taking notes? Should you be coding along? And it's a tough question for me to answer because a lot of it is going to be on your own personal learning style. I recommend. I don't know. I really don't know how to answer that. I think it's great to maybe just try to focus on the lecture itself without taking notes, without coding along. That would be my recommendation. If that doesn't work for you, for me, if I'm sitting through a video lecture and I'm not engaging myself somehow, I'm probably going to tune out and check Reddit or Facebook or something like that. And we certainly don't want you to do that. So if taking notes keeps you engaged, then do it. If coding along keeps you engaged, then do it. We do record all the lectures and they get posted, and we're going to show you that link in just a second. So you can rewatch them later. You are highly recommended. When you rewatch the lecture, change the playback speed. You can make it faster. If you make it faster and put on the closed captioning, you can probably follow along at like 1.5 or 1.75 speed and still get the benefit of it. Of course, pausing and slowing down when you need to. If one of my lectures just didn't make sense to you, even on rewatching, feel free to ask me for a recording from either another time I've delivered the lecture or another lecturer. You will not hurt my feelings if you say, hey, your explanation of this thing didn't really make sense. Do you have any other resources? Because we have many leads across the world that have delivered these lectures. We all do it in different ways. So if my way didn't make sense to you, maybe someone else as well. And that won't hurt my feelings or anything if you ask for additional resources. Nick, you have a question?
Yes. I had finished my pre-work like almost the day it was due, and I didn't get to finish all the way through. Is that something that is gonna be of worry, or do I have to do the pre-work tonight?
You mean you got up to basketball but didn't go much further?
Yeah, I didn't get past all the way through. I didn't get 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's going to be new stuff coming out today. So I would focus, this is for all of you, I would focus on the new stuff. That being said, if you are struggling with the new stuff, you may find it helpful to go back and review some of those concepts by doing some of the bigger labs. I wouldn't do all of them at this point, but if you say, you know what, I'm falling behind already, I'm a little lost, talk to us and we'll point out some of the bigger ones that you should do.
Okay, so just focus on what you're gonna give us now, and if I'm stuck, ask.
Correct.
Okay.
Good question. Other questions? Cool. So for the first thing, I want you to clone down our lecture code. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. Please follow my steps closely, because if you do this wrong, we can fix it later, but it's just kind of a pain. So first, I need you to navigate to, on your Canvas, your lecture recording link. First, I want to make sure you can all get that. I know there were some permissioning issues beforehand.
Homeroom or phase one?
Yeah, we should be in, good question. It's phase one now, right? Shannon or Mateo? I know you guys got to it. It's a little challenging for me to answer some of these questions just because as an admin, my views are all different than yours. Let's see here.
Should you be in phase one or in homeroom?
Good question. Shannon or Mateo, have you found it? I just had it.
I'm in the homeroom, and it's if you go to modules, it's the very last module for the face.
Thank you.
Everyone make sure they can access that. I see a bunch of you jumping into it. Should just link you to a regular Google Sheet. I'm going to start sharing my screen.
What am I looking for? And you said in homeroom, I go to modules, and then where?
All the way down to the bottom.
I'm sorry.
Mateo, you got it? Can you walk me through it?
I also posted the link in
pulling it
Zoom
up right
chat. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the very bottom thing.
under
in the,
it should look like this.
Their master repo.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, and go to that link, that GitHub link, which should lead you here.
Sorry, I'm still not able to get there. My modules page is empty, I think.
So go to, let's see here. You go to home. You all can see my screen, right? I'm on my Canvas profile.
Yes.
My home's a little different than yours, but if you get to your homeroom, and then click modules, and scroll all the way down to the bottom, lecture recordings.
Okay, thank you.
Or you can click on the link that, who was it, Conrad sent out in Zoom chat, which should lead you right here. Anyone not have it? Great. So if you click on this GitHub link, it goes to a GitHub repository. We're all going to clone this down to our computer right now.
Hey, Paul, real quick, can you set up breakout rooms so I can help one of the students?
Let's stay right here at the moment, and we can help you through that. If you can't get this just now, we'll get you through it later. Okay, so this repository is going to be your lecture code for the entire 15 weeks you're here at Flatiron, not just phase one and phase two with me, but all the time. I want to talk briefly about the difference between clone and fork. Anyone want to take a stab at what the differences between those two are, or what they both do?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. So a fork is a repo created on your GitHub account, and a clone brings it down onto your local machine.
Yes, I'm going to amend just part of that, but you got the gist. Yeah, so fork is when someone else writes some codes, they have a repository, and I say, you know what, I like what they have, but I want to take it off in my own direction. Right from where they are right now, I'm going to make a copy of it, and then it's going to be mine. It's like if you wrote a book or were writing a book, and I took it and just photocopied the entire thing. Now with my photocopy, I can do whatever I want to it. I can change it, I can burn it, I can throw it out. Your book is still fine. The good thing about that is I can do what I want. I can add my own features. The bad thing is if I've photocopied your book and you write new pages in your book, well, they're not going to be in my photocopy, right? So Fork is making it totally separate. So we are not going to fork this. Do not fork this because you want to keep up with my changes. When I make changes in lecture today and tomorrow and 6 weeks from now, you're going to want those changes. Clone, as Hiram, is it Hiram? Am I pronouncing it correctly? As Hiram said, clone is taking any repo from GitHub and getting a local copy on your computer, whether it was your repo or someone else's. So that's what we're going to do right now. If you click this green code button, if you've already set up SSH, you can use that. If not, you can click HTTPS. They're both fine. HTTPS is just going to make you enter your GitHub username and password. It's just, you know, the headache of entering username and password. Otherwise, it's fine. If you haven't set up SSH, we'll get you through that later. It's in the setup steps. Anyway, you're going to copy that link. Then you're going to go over to your terminal, whether it's in VS Code or elsewhere, however you've decided to do it. Now I'm storing it, because this is where it makes sense for me, in a directory called Flatiron Batches. You can start it, put it in whatever directory makes sense to you. I wouldn't put it in a directory called Mod1 or Phase 1 because it's not just Phase 1. If you do that, it's fine, whatever. It just won't, you know, maybe make sense to you once you get to Phase 2, but you could always move it. No big deal.
I have one question.
Sure.
You said put it in a terminal. Does it matter which one, or it can be just your computer terminal?
Just your computer terminal. Yeah, if many of you are probably using VS Code, and there's a terminal built into that. I use iTerm. If you have a Windows computer, it's something else, but they should all be the same thing.
Not the command prompt, right? Or
yeah, the command prompt. All the same thing.
I put it into Atom. Is that okay?
Atom's fine. Yeah.
I'm assuming you're gonna have to make a file for this.
Git will do the file for us. I'm going to walk you through that. First, let's get to where you want to be. Just a little bit about command line. So ls, if you haven't seen that, that just lists everything in this folder. So you can see I have folders for the past 2 batches. PWD stands for present working directory. That'll just tell you where you are. So you can see I'm in this folder. This is the complete path to this file folder. To make a directory is mkdir and then the name of the directory. So I just made a directory called test. If I type ls, you can see that test directory. And to get into that directory, cd, the name of it.
So since I'm on PC, none of those commands work. I mean, I can navigate it on my own a little bit, but I don't know if that's going to be a problem.
No, there are Windows equivalents for all those. I'm unable to help you with that. Mateo probably can, or Google is going to be your best friend.
I can look them up. I wouldn't know off the top of my head the Windows equivalents because I use a Linux subsystem on my PC. But let me see if I can find those commands for you.
Yeah, don't like you said. At least those will not work in the CMD on Windows. There was the thing about downloading, like Mateo was saying, a Linux subsystem. I think that's what most of us are using. So if you need help with that, yeah, that's totally fair. If you need help with that, feel free to message around.
Yeah, I'm okay for now, but at some point, for sure, I want to change that.
I don't think we've ever had this many Windows people in a cohort, so maybe we can form a support group for y'all. I only meant that with a little snark.
Hi, I have a question. Like I'm trying to get I'm trying to get to the GitHub, like to the terminal, but I cannot access because I have Xcode, and it's asking me to sign into my GitHub account, but I'm trying to put my username, but it doesn't ask me for a password. So I'm like kind of stuck in that part.
You're using Xcode for your editor?
Right, to use the terminal
Okay.
to get to where you are right now.
Are you on a Mac?
Yes, I'm on a Mac, and I selected, okay. What I see is create a new Xcode project, clone an existing project, which is what we have to do right now, right? With GitHub.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Xcode, or is this new for you?
This is new for me.
I would suggest not using Xcode. Xcode I know is used. I've only used it for Swift programming, which is iOS, building iOS apps, and it can be pretty heavy. Might be more than you need. I would just open your terminal, which should be built in. So if you
okay, got it.
I like iTerm, which is something you can download and install. If you don't have that right now, just stick to the regular terminal.
Okay.
Problem with using the regular terminal for Windows is that we can't like put it into a file like that.
Yeah, so we don't really support Windows here at Flatiron. You're certainly welcome to use it, and I think Mateo can be a good resource for you for that. But in general, as your admissions person should have told you that if you're on Windows, sometimes you're gonna just be on your own. Which is your call. It's totally fine, but I personally can't help you much with that.
The equivalent of ls is just dir, and the equivalent of pwd is just path, at least as far as I can tell.
I think I saw that too. I think the mkdr, I think that's the same command in Windows.
All right, a little more about your command line from here. So to go up a directory, a cd ... will always take you up a directory. So you see that put me back in batches. I can get back to my Flatiron. I can get up to code, whatever. I highly recommend using the tab autocomplete. Not only will it make your life a lot easier, but like if I'm trying to get into the Flatiron directory, I can just hit tab and it'll complete. And now I know that my next directory should be batches, and then it should be DC web. Well, we don't have the 08 one, right? But let's say I just get confused and I try to do DC web. If I hit tab right now, it doesn't work because there is no directory starting with DC web. It's just a little error checking. Also, if you hit tab, it'll tell you all your options. So I go into batches, tab, and then that's it for me. All right, now I'm going to clone down that repo, git clone, and it looks like I've lost my copy. Copy this, paste it here. Now you'll see if I ls.
I'm doing the same. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm doing the same thing as you do and copy the GitHub from the code part, and then I copy the link and I put it on the terminal, and it's not recognizing it.
What does it say?
Not such file. It says not such file or directory.
What comes after that?
HTTPS and the link of GitHub that I just copied. They use SSH that I just copied.
You did git clone?
Right. Git clone with HTTPS or SSH, right? Should I use HTTPS?
Yeah, try that.
I tried it with both, and it's giving me invalid active developer path error.
Yeah, same thing with me.
Has anyone gotten it working?
like I said with the window.
I got it working.
I got it.
I also have it.
All right, so it's
So mine says that I have the directory, but I'm trying to access it and I can't. When I tried to do CD, it just says no file or directory.
what
But
happened.
when I put git,
All
when I
right.
put git clone, it says that the directory is already there.
Raise your hand with the raise hand feature. Raise your hand if you have not gotten it.
Hold on.
A bunch of you. I don't know. Shannon, Mateo, any ideas?
Could you say that again? I was looking up some ways on how to fix some errors.
A bunch of people are not cloning this down.
Okay.
Are.
Well, right off the bat, who said they ran into the invalid active developer path?
I did.
Okay, so did you install the Xcode command line tools package?
I believe I did, but I'll just check.
Oh yeah, that actually raises an excellent point. If you didn't get through all those manual setup steps, I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't work, and that's okay. We'll get it for you later today. But so if you know that you're one of those people and you just didn't get to finish all those, or there were problems doing it, then don't worry about all this right now.
Mine is a little bit different. I did download everything, but mine is saying the authenticity of hostgithub.com can't be established. It gave me the RSA fingerprint and it says, are you sure you want to continue connecting?
I
Yeah,
did the exact same thing.
You said yes? Okay.
Yeah, I put in yes and it downloaded everything.
Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't doing something I wasn't supposed to. Thank you.
All right. Since there's so many people though who haven't been able to do this, then I actually am going to put in breakout rooms, so we can help you with that. Hold on, I'll stop the recording.
Real quick question. The calendar shows that we have lecture until 11 a.m. Is that supposed to be 12?
It is now.
Cool. Fantastic. That makes sense.
There's nothing else. I didn't look. There's nothing else scheduled at 11, is there?
No, it's just the icebreaker at 12.
Yeah, we'll be done before then. All right, let us see what we can do. So I'm going to CD into this folder, ls. Great, there's all the stuff. And I'm going to open it in my VS Code. Dot means the current directory. So I've set it up so that the word code opens up VS Code. There are instructions in the manual setup steps on how to get that working. It's not too tough. Anyway, this is going to open my current directory, which is the dot in VS Code. And there it is. Just so you know, lecture notes you'll often see. That's my notes. They're not secret. You can feel free to look at them, but don't expect them to necessarily make sense to you. That's just my own little cheat sheet. All right.
Should we also be in that directory right now, the iterators review, or is it just we're watching?
Yeah, so at this point, that's kind of your call. There will be times I will say, all right, now you all do this, but you'll be able to just pull down the changes and we'll walk you through that when it gets closer to it. If you want to code along, you can, and we'll talk about that when I give you your assignment in a moment.
Could you go back to the terminal real quick before you can? Yeah. Thank you. So dot means current, and you said that you set it up some way that code opens your VS Visual Studios.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to open up this. I have a sandbox here. There's nothing here. This is just to play around with right now. We're going to review some of the basic iterators. There are a lot of different iterators. There's 4 that you're going to be using a lot. And they are .each. I'm in a Ruby file. .each. .map. .find. And .select. Ruby's kind of a weird language. It's newer as languages go. And when they started writing Ruby, they said, you know what? Some people are going to be coming to us from Python. Some people are coming from JavaScript. Some people are coming from C# or Java or whoever knows what. So a lot of our methods have multiple names, and that was just to make people feel more comfortable if they came from another language. Since these concepts are prevalent in most, if not all languages, and they're called different things, Ruby just said, listen, maybe JavaScript calls it map and Java calls it collect. I have no idea if those are correct. If those are correct, that's just an example. Anyway, map and collect do the exact same thing. You could use them interchangeably. Find is interchangeable with detect, and select is interchangeable with find all. Just so if you see them, you would be okay with that. Okay, I want to practice a bit of these and talk about the differences. So I'm going to start with an array of instructors. Each instructor will be represented by a hash, name Paul, lead.
Hey, Paul, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm a little new to Zoom, and I've lost my screen for.
You look under your bed. That's where things are when I usually lose.
Yeah, I saw that post you. So I can
get
see
used
all
to
of
my dad jokes. They happen a lot. You lost your screen. You're on a Mac, right?
Yes.
Try 3-finger swiping on your trackpad. See if it's just in a different window.
Okay, so I've got you up now in a full window.
But not, you don't see my sandbox.rb.
Not your screen sharing now.
Go to view options and you hit exit full screen.
View option, exit full screen. Okay, so now I see your shared screen, but it's just in a little box.
Now make that full screen.
Now you can change the zoom ratio. You can set it to fit window.
How do I do that?
It's in the view options, the first one, zoom ratio, and then you follow the arrow.
Oh. I just get request remote control and side-by-side mode.
So there are no other options beside that?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Huh, okay.
See.
I don't see those options either.
No, not on your windows, inside the zoom. There's view options. But he's not seeing zoom ratio.
Okay, so I have your screen being shared now, and it's fit to window. Okay, yep, I think I've got it now.
Sweet.
Woo.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so here I have an array of instructors. Each instructor represented by a hash, has a key of name, value that is a string, a key of role, which is a value also of a string. I want to just pay attention to the way I'm describing this data. Whenever we're talking about what a variable equals, we want to talk about what the data structure is. In this case, it's an array, and what's inside it. In this case, this is an array of hashes. Each hash has a key of name, which is a string, and a role, which is a string.
Why in Ruby relative to other languages like statement or each individual line is not ended by a semicolon? Like how does Ruby know how to separate, I guess, chunks of code?
Yeah, so the semicolons aren't even really used in JavaScript too much anymore. It has to do. What's that?
In Java and C++, they're used. Like
I don't know those languages. Yeah, but that's how exactly Ruby knows. I don't know. I think it just matches up the punctuation. So the line breaks I've put here are just for human sake. It's no different if I took them out, put this all on one line.
Yeah.
Right? There's no difference here. It's just a little harder for people to read.
I know JavaScript does it through the compiler. Like you can leave off the semicolons and the compiler picks it up for you.
Thank you.
All right, so our first iterator, each. Each is the most flexible one. It just means I'm going to go over each thing in this iterable, in this array, and do the same thing to each one. So for each instructor, I'll do something. And it takes in a do end block. The thing that goes inside these pipes, you can put whatever you want. I could put X, but be good programmers, be kind to your future selves, and put in whatever describes a single element of this array or of this iterable. Since I know each of these represents an instructor, the best thing is to put instructor. So for now, we'll just put out to the screen the string, hi, my name is, and we'll do some string interpolation, instructor name. And I test my code.
I have a question.
Yep.
Are iterators the same as enumerables?
Enumerables are the things we can iterate over.
Okay.
So they are related, but not the same thing. Okay, I'm opening my terminal. To run this bit of code, there are multiple ways to do this, but for now, I'm just going to type Ruby, because it's a Ruby file, and the name of the file. Great, and I have my first error.
So in this example, with the enumerable would be the array of instructors?
Correct.
Okay.
So this is, I wanted to demonstrate the need for a tight feedback loop. A lot of early programmers, or sometimes even a lot of experienced programmers, will do a whole bunch of code all at once, throw a whole bunch at the screen, and then run it. And then when it breaks, it's very difficult to debug. What we want to do is do little things one at a time so we can debug what we have. So the first thing, I have an error. And if I look down at it, I can see when I ran this file, here's my error message. I think early programmers see something like this, get scared, and ignore it. When it's insanely helpful, you must read this stuff. So if I read this, I can see that on line 12, I had a syntax error, meaning I just typed something that wasn't correct syntax. It didn't expect this word do. And if I look back, I can say, oh yeah, that's right. Do wasn't supposed to come here. It was supposed to come here. I fix it. I test my code again. And great, that all worked like I expected. What are your questions?
What's a keyboard shortcut to open the terminal? I don't know how you did that.
Control backtick, which is to the left of the number 1. Great. Now let's talk about map. I generally stick to map versus collect, but that's really whatever word makes sense to you. Feel free to use them interchangeably. Iterable. What map and collect do is make a new array based on the return value of the block for each element of the iterable. So let's say I wanted to, instead of just putting these strings out, let's take our instructors and we're going to map each instructor. Let's say I want the first 2 letters of each person's name. So my goal here is to get an array that says PA, SH, and MA, right? first two letters of each instructor's name. So I might first think to myself, all right, well, first I need to know how to get the first two letters of a string. Let's go to Google. You may know this. It's great if you do. Experienced programmers will still have to look this stuff up. Especially once you learn many languages or multiple languages, you're not going to keep straight in your head, hey, how to get the first two characters of a string. Totally normal to Google this stuff. So I definitely want to include the word Ruby to be clear about what language I'm in. And just put in what you're trying to do. Get the first two characters of a string. Okay, Stack Overflow is usually a good reference. Trying to find a function for selecting, for example, the first 100 characters of the string. That seems promising. Make sure you get in the habit of checking the date of these things. 2011 was insanely long ago for computing, but it was edited recently, so we're good. Okay, try foo, 0 to 100, any range will do. It is well explained. We got a little snark in there, fine. Okay, that looks promising. So let's try. Take the instructor, which is a string, and I go 0, 2, 2. Now, if I run this code, nothing seems to happen. They're still doing this part, which I'm going to comment out. Nothing happens. It is actually executing this code, but I'm not really doing anything with it. This whole thing returns a new array, which I'll save to a variable. First two letters equals that. And then let's just print first two letters so we can see that array. Nil, nil, nil. That's not what I wanted. What did I do wrong? I actually don't know the answer. Anyone want to take a guess? How come you did that? Oh, I know what I did wrong.
Oh yeah, I know what you did wrong. Collections. You did the wrong enumerator.
No, map I think was the right enumerator. The good thing I have is I can see I'm getting back 3 things, even though they're all nil. So map and collect will always return an array of the same length. This array was 3 things long.
Oh, it's instructor, and then you have to access the key.
Yeah, so I just tried to get the first 2 things, first 2 characters of the whole hash. I wanted the first 2 characters of the name. So let's get up the name, and we test again. And there we go. What questions do you have?
So the only way to use map is to store it in a variable?
Well, no, yes and no. You can use it without that, but the chances are good you're doing that for a reason, right? We want to map each instructor to this new array. So if I don't save it to a variable, it's probably not a good use of it. I can chain other iterators and things after this, but that's a little more advanced than I want to do just a second. We might get to it.
For this specific example, we don't necessarily need to use map. Each would have done the same thing.
That's true. I could have done this with each. I could say, I'll start first 2 letters. I'll just give it a new variable with each, and I'll start that as an empty array. And now I can say instructors dot each do for each instructor. Take that first 2 letters with each and shovel in instructor name 0, 2. And now if I print first 2 letters with each, I do get the same thing.
So the only difference was the declaration of a new variable with each.
Yes, so when I have to do with each, I have to set up the array myself and then shovel each one in. The map would be the preferred way to do this, although each would be acceptable. This is just a little cleaner and a little easier to read, but they do the same amount of code.
The map returns the new array, right? But each returns just the original array every time?
That's correct. So, well, either way, instructors itself is not being modified. But a map, just to repeat what Mark just said, map returns a new array, each returns the original array. So for example, let's say I did this incorrectly. Let's say, instead I do it this way. So this is incorrect. I say, hey, first two letters with each equals instructors.each, blah, 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 blah. If I print this out now.
That's just the original.
Well, that just won't work. I guess I want to take this away. If I do this now, notice it returns the original array. Probably not what I want. Generally speaking, you're not going to set a variable equal to an each, because all you're doing, all of this right now is equivalent to that, which is kind of pointless. Good questions. Other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Are we allowed to, is there a reason not to use the bang version of methods? And the only reason why I asked this is because doing the pre-work, I was looking up, and a lot of times the bang method did fit the situation, but it's just, online everybody said, don't use bang methods, don't use bang methods.
So a bang method, for those who haven't seen it, is an exclamation point is often referred to as a bang, and it's when a method has the exclamation point after it. Can you use those with each and map? I don't even know if those work. Each, Ruby.
I don't know for each and map, but they're bang methods for a lot of methods.
Yeah, I've never heard of anyone saying don't use those. So this is a side note, but a good one. So a bang method, like for example, if I say loud name equals Paul, is it uppercase? Uppercase? Something like that. Let's do the method. Name equals Paul. Violent way to deliver a package. Okay, notice loud name is just now my name all in uppercase. This out for a second. And that's fine, but sometimes maybe I want my name to equal my name dot uppercase. So I could do this one of two ways. Let's make it like this. So I'm just saying, hey, reset this variable to the uppercase of my name. And you see my name in uppercase down here. This line 30 is equivalent to saying my name dot uppercase bang. Same thing. So lines 30 and 31 are equivalent. I have not heard of any reason not to do that. That doesn't mean there isn't one.
So it's just to clarify again, it kind of overrides the
Yeah, it resets my name to the return value of my name dot uppercase. It's exactly what line 30 is doing. 30 and 31 are equivalent.
Okay.
All right, so you're going to get your first little mini assignment right now. And it is find a method called get names. It takes the array of instructors, that's the one I gave you, and returns an array of just the names. Try it with an each and with a dot map. You're going to be put into breakout rooms in a second. But before we do that, I want to tell you how you can get my changes. There's going to be a couple different ways depending on whether or not you've been typing in this folder. So first thing I'm going to do is commit my changes, basically save them, and push them up to GitHub. So git status, just to see where I am, and I can see I've modified this file. I want to add my changes, and Shannon's going to cover all this afternoon. This is just kind of an overview. So I'm going to add that file. I'm going to commit my changes. I have to give it a little message, which is -m, and I'll just say mid lecture of each map, whatever. I hit enter. If I look at git status again, I can see that my branch, my master branch, which is I'm working on, is ahead of origin master, which refers to GitHub, by one commit, the commit I just made. And I can push those changes up. And now they're on GitHub. Now, if you have not been working in this folder, if you haven't typed anything, you can just do git pull and you'll get those changes. That's easy. All right. If you have been working in this folder, and that's fine, you have two options. You can either commit your own changes. You can't push. You're not allowed to push to my GitHub because I think that should be obvious. Why not? But you can't pull down if you have uncommitted changes. So you can either commit your changes and then pull. You might get a merge conflict, which just means GitHub says, listen, your stuff is a little different than the stuff on GitHub, and I'm not really sure which one you want. They are normal. The word conflict I know scares people, but it's totally normal. If, however, you've just been kind of fooling around, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but if you've just been like, it's just a sandbox and it's not stuff you care about saving, then you can do the command git stash, and they'll just toss it out. And then you can do git pull. All right, so either way, you should pull this stuff down, and I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. If you need help, reach out to us, and we will help you. All right, so hope you got through that without too much trouble. Were there any questions about it?
In our breakout group, we did something and we thought it was right, and then we also put it into the IRB and it was right, but it never prints anything out to the terminal.
Okay. So I'm going to make a guess. You tell me if it was something to this effect. You did.
Oh, I guess we never, never mind.
Figured it out, all right?
We never created a function to start with in the first place, so I guess it never ran. So I think our solution is right, but it never got to it. Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm going to go through it anyway, but that was the easiest problem I've ever solved, just 3 letters. All right, so we have a method called getNames that takes the array of instructors. There were other ways to structure this. However, I want you all to get in the habit of reading instructions and following them. And I don't mean that with snark, but in your jobs, you're going to get requirements. And just because there's other ways to do it, you're going to have to stick to some sort of requirements because your other members of your team will be working on it. So if I expect this to be a method called getNames, and that's how I'm building other things interacting with it, because I'm expecting that's what you're going to build, and you decide to go off on your own, well, it can be a little challenging. But anyway, so it's going to take instructor array. So if I do it with an each, that would be take that instructor array dot each do for each instructor. I guess I should start off with a name array equals this. I will say often, generally in programming, you don't usually use words like array and hash and things in variables because it's kind of redundant, but I'll be using it here often as we're learning because that can be helpful. All right, and so for each instructor, I'll shovel in the name. So name array dot shovel instructor name. And then if I run my code, nothing seems to happen. That was from before because I forgot to actually call my array. Get names. No, and I didn't return name array either. Return name array.
Instead of using those like two arrows to put them into the array, you can use plus equals interchangeably, right?
Yeah, let's find out. Get names. I'm passing in those instructors from above. Still nothing seems to happen. Why not? Go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead, whoever that was.
Return is not actually going to put it into the console. You'll have to do either print or puts.
Exactly. So I might say, just to demonstrate, and that's a terrible variable name, but it's just for right now, right? Doesn't do anything, but then I can print X or puts X. I'll show you the difference between the two in a second. And there we go. The difference between the two, if I puts X, it puts out each element of the array on its own line. When I'm printing arrays, I usually prefer print because it just preserves the array structure, but whatever, whichever one's good for you. And of course, I don't actually have to assign this to a variable. I can just print it. I think there was a question.
Is that the only difference? I see that it preserves the array, but it also puts it in different lines.
Puts each element on its own line. It puts a new
Correct.
line after each one.
Without the format of the array.
Without the format of the array, yes.
Does P do the same exact thing, but with the format of the array?
I think P is just short for puts. I think.
Oh, is it really?
Nope, P is short for print.
Okay. All right.
I thought I remember reading somewhere that P also returns as well as outputting it to the console. Is that correct?
That's what I thought.
Let's find out. X. Okay, so P does seem to return it. And if we do print, it does not. Okay, so print returns nil, whereas P, I guess, returns value. I didn't know that. Cool.
Okay.
So I think I was telling a couple of the groups this. Print and puts have some uses in debugging, but after phase one here, you're probably not going to be using print and puts in real code past, maybe some debugging steps very often. It's fine, but most of the time you want your method to return something, and if you need to print it, you'll print the return value.
Well, quick question. On line 45, when you are calling the method, it says on get names, you have instructors here. Where are you getting that from? No, is it defined somewhere else in the code? Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Also, when you use P, do you have to put, I guess, the argument that you're passing to it in parentheses, or would it work without that parentheses?
I think it works without it. Ruby is pretty willy-nilly with punctuation, but I think getting in the good habits of including the punctuation, parentheses and whatever, will help you when you get to JavaScript and other languages that are stricter with that.
And also for functions, can you use brackets instead of the end keyword?
What was that question again? I didn't hear you.
Instead of this, can you use brackets?
No, you can't. I tried that in our group and it didn't work.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
You can use that for loops and inner blocks. Yeah.
Yeah, anywhere it says
do
end. Yeah.
Oh, you mean
the
just end? Yeah. Curly brackets. That each instructor name array shovel in instructor name.
But you can replace the or you can add a curly brace after the parameter and then replace the end with another curly brace.
No, I tried that. That didn't work.
Even if you could get that working, that would not be the convention, and I wouldn't advise that. I don't think it does work, but even if you could, I wouldn't do it. But this is fine for an each. So you'll often see this when the block, you can either do a do end block or these curly blocks, they're equivalent. I would only use these curly block if it's something very short. If it's something more than one line, then stick with a do.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Is it good practice to put the variable and the empty array inside the function or outside the function?
Is it the variable and the empty? Oh, this. Yeah. Yeah, good question. It should go inside the array. We want to avoid global variables. Global variables are things that are assigned everywhere. So right now I have a global variable of instructors, which is fine for today. If this were real production code or something, I might be a little more skeptical about doing this. But the reason we don't want, let's say I did this name array, right? I'll demonstrate. And then, I don't know if this will, I'm going to try to trigger the error. Let's do the map one. Instructor array. Array dot map. I'm sorry. Name array equals instructor array dot map for each instructor. Just take their name. Return name array.
Now, would that return the name array that's empty?
Say again?
Would that return the name array that's empty, or no?
That's what I'm checking. I'm hoping that I can trigger an error here. So let's just.
It is conflicting.
Yeah, that's my goal. I'm purposely doing this badly to demonstrate this array of whether this error of why we shouldn't have it out here. I'm not positive it'll work. We'll find out. Get names, map, instructors, and that's what I want to print.
Are you trying to make it a global variable?
Yes, hang on.
Don't you use an @ for the global variable?
Do I? I don't know. Global variables are such a bad idea that I don't even know how to do them because I don't do them.
I think it's $, I think.
Yeah, it is a $. Yep.
Yeah, it's still a mess. Don't do global variables. The point is, and some of you are seeing what could have happened had I made this a global variable in name array, intending to use it in here, and then just I happened to name something the same thing down here, expecting it to be local, I might have some weird conflict where this name array, instead of being this, actually thought it was this. Global variables are just a bad idea. And that's...
Except for constants, right?
What's that?
Except if you have a constant, right, that you're using.
Maybe you could do it with a constant, but even then, I might make a method that just returns that constant. Okay. At any rate, let's make sure this works now. There we go. Other questions about get map versus each? I do want to get to the other two iterators. Just going to fold some of this stuff up and get rid of some of this cruft. All right. So find and select both take in a block. Returns a Boolean. Or let's say that evaluates to a Boolean, which is true or false, and returns first matching element. Select find all, almost the same thing, except returns all matching elements, returns array of all matching elements. So let's say I wanted to find the instructor who is a lead. Def find lead. I can type. Taking in that instructor array. I'll take the instructor array. And I just want the first one that matches. I happen to know there's only one. Doesn't matter. It's always going to return just the first one, or nil if it can't find any. Find the instructor. And then I want something that's a Boolean. So role is lead. So it'll go through each instructor and say, hey, is this role equal to lead? If it is, great, return it and stop. If not, it goes on to the next one. So if I put find lead instructors, run it. There we go. I get the entire instructor hash of Paul, whose role is lead. Now, I might want to do something like lead equals, and then puts lead name, if I just wanted their name. And that's the whole point of assigning it to a variable and thinking about what this will return, so I get this back. Now, if instead I want the coaches, and I want all of them, find all coaches, instructor array, almost the same thing. Select all the instructors whose role is coach.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
When you use .find, it finds the first one that fits your comparison, correct?
Uh-huh.
So when would you use first?
Dot first will just return the first thing in an array automatically, whatever it is.
Not in comparison. Okay.
Correct. All right, what do I have wrong here? Let's read the error message. On my line 55, in the block, undefined local variable or method instruct, right, as I was typing from up above. Fix that. Fun game you can play in the lecture is try to figure out which bugs I've done intentionally as a teaching tool and which bugs are just because I don't know what I'm doing. It's about 50-50 at best.
I was going to mention it, but then I was also like, maybe this is for a reason. You know?
Let's pretend it was. And there we go. There's all the coaches printed out. What are your questions?
All makes sense so far.
And just one question.
Sure.
On line 54, when you're defining this variable and you still calling instructors, even though the variable is defined outside of the, even though the array is defined outside the variable, it's still calling. So is that a global array that you have up there in order to call here on line 52?
Instructors?
Yeah.
Or in line, wait, what line number?
Instructors here when you're calling instructor in the perimeter, I guess, in the argument. But
yeah, so instructors is always this array, always coming back to this original one.
So that array is, you're calling it outside of the method. So is it a global array? So how are you able to call that even though it's not in that method?
Good question. So instructors itself is global at the moment.
Okay.
And I'm calling it here, passing it into find all coaches, at which point it gets relabeled as instructor array.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
Now, the nice thing about this being a return value, if I say coaches equals, now I can use my helper method, for example, of get names.
Mm-hmm.
And if I print get names of coaches,
You gotta, it's commented out.
Where is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have it.
Yep, good thought. What did I do wrong? Oh, that was because I took out the return value here. Let's see. And there we go. What questions do you have?
So just to understand, hi, this is Jerry. For the instructor array, it automatically, I know it takes the instructors in, but I guess does Ruby kind of already recognize then when you're talking about instructor array, you're technically talking about instructors?
When I'm talking about instructor array, I'm talking about whatever got passed in here. So I could do, I could put this in directly. Just gonna cut and paste this for now. I wouldn't recommend this because it's gonna be messy, but it works. All right, I can directly pass this all in. Whatever got passed in gets labeled instructor array, and then I can use that here.
Okay.
So even if you had like another array called students, you can still pass that in there and it will return all the students.
Correct. I know we're supposed to do the icebreaker now, but that's okay. I do want you to work on this assignment as a group. So again, I'm going to commit my code. Hit add sandbox, commit, done with find and select, push it. So I know some of the groups already took a peek at this. That's fine. There's an assignment called iterators.rb. Read through the instructions and try and get through as many of these 5 problems as you can. We'll be bouncing around to help. Whoever, if you shared your screen in the first time, have someone else share their screen as you do this again, because you're going to be in the same groups. Are there any questions about what you're doing right now? All right, go have fun. We'll spend in about 15, 20 minutes on this, and then you'll get a break and you'll have your icebreaker. See you in a bit. Jerry, what room were you in before? Looks like you got
I think I was in 3. Yeah, I made a mistake and clicked Zoom again while they were moving me to the main room.
No problem. Happens all the time. Let me move you. There you go.
Thank you.
Alex, you good? Do I need to assign you? Are you frozen?